We're going to start. Thank you guys for coming. Welcome to the Pan-Africa's first ever event. I thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules and coming out and being a part of this event called Visions of Us. The purpose of this event is to bridge the gap between continental Africans and members of the African diaspora. What we aim to do is to explore whether or not there can be unity on both sides. I started this project through a photo series in which I captured portraits of individuals as well as interviewed them in regards to these issues. We filmed a mini documentary in which we had a few individuals that were featured in the photo series come together and share their personal thoughts and experiences regarding race, discrimination, and most importantly, the disunity in which people don't normally discuss that lives amongst Africans and members of the African diaspora. The end goal for Visions of Us is to film a documentary in which we'd be able to travel parts of Africa, the Caribbean islands, Brazil, and back here in the US. Thank you for your time. And now, without further ado, Pan-Africa's alternative satrap, Ashley Yarden.
Pan-Africanism for me is a way of life. It's about Black unity, which made me come up with this poem, and it's called I'm Black Like. I'm Black like wide nose, juicy lips, thick hips. I'm Black like you better get a house before the street lights get lit. I'm Black like hot comb through my hair. Black woman no one can compare. I am rare. I'm Black like rich African history from Zimbabwe to Mali. I'm Black like unapologetically. I say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud.
And now, without further ado, we'll start with the mini documentary.
When Africans come from Africa to America, maybe they feel as if they're going to be too Americanized, they're going to forget their values, and they want to.
We just think like, you're on the street, every Black man is going to be walking down the street like, looking like Denzel, and every other person's like, that was how I thought about it. But then I get here, and, right, it wasn't as welcoming, as
even though I knew Africa was very rich and people were very cultural, in my mind I still had this idea like they're still like not as wealthy as us, you know what I mean? Because of what's portrayed in me. So it's like when I went over there and then I saw all of this stuff, like we saw from poverty to the rich, and like when they were rich over there, they're like, I'm talking like, it blew my mind.
Well, all I've seen is them telling me to go back to my country or calling me African from the scratch.
The reason why they have that kind of mentality that you have to stay away from African Americans is not really from a place of hate per se. It's the fact that they pride themselves with the fact that they want most African Americans, they want you to be a doctor or something like if you came in and you said, oh, I want to be like an artist or I want to do this, I want to be a rapper or something like that. They probably just like some people go to the extent of like, you're not doing this in my house.
For us, Africa meant pain, because that's kind of where we started with slavery. And so we were these Africans who came over. Like, what was it that you could like hold me down, or what was the break? You know, I think that's how they perceived it. But for me, it was more. I'm obviously the inquiring type. So if someone were to say, "Are you African?" I'd say no. But if you thought I was, where do you think I'd be from?
That like people from those areas in the South have to be taught about double consciousness, whether you knew the term or not. That the Gaussian theology of like double consciousness, that we have this own way of thinking between our own culture.
It's like good to want to be successful, but don't put your other brothers down just to.
Yeah, but I think that's where the disunity comes from too. I'm a very big believer in knowledge is power. That term is not like, don't take that for granted. Because there's more than a way to be an intelligent man. You do not have to be in a classroom to have that. Right? Our leaders, like the Black Panthers, them all being in prison for we know why, what reason, is for us to not know where we come from, and for us to not have that knowledge to be unified. Because the people that try to unify us are not here anymore. We don't like that. We want to be able to say that, okay, cool. I know exactly what country I came from Africa, like that, where my ancestry came from. We don't have that anymore.
And I always wanted to have that identity in me, but like, I always feel like I was never able to claim blackness because I'm not dark skinned. That was always something that I had to make the connection, but like, something that I always questioned was like, what is necessarily blackness? Like, is it really just have to do with your skin? Does it really have to do with that? Because you think of it, you're like, oh, you're black, but you must be dark. I have that struggle in school all the time. People ask me like, what's your race? I'm like, technically, I don't have it because I'm Hispanic. But if I identify, I'll be like, I'm black. I will always be black when I'm white.
I went to SUNY Oneonta, and that is a racist town. You can just feel the tension as soon as you walk up there in the mountain areas and stuff like that. I've been called the N-word. I had ropes hanging outside my dorm, the trees that are outside my dorm window. I've had monkeys drawn on my door. I had girls like scratching me in the middle of the night and I wake up with scratches on my face. I've had these type of issues before. I'm very defensive when it comes to who I speak to, how do I go about that. I wasn't taught that in the house, but it's just like when I grow up in school and how I behave when I go to these after school programs and go to these different jobs. I build up this wall to make sure that I know who I am and how I want to be.
I'm not throwing no shade at nobody, but there's a lot of artists who don't really use that platform that we have to really like help and uplift our people. And all these reality shows where it just shows like the ratchetness of like African Americans.
The biggest crime is showing a monolith of blackness. Like there's nothing wrong with being ratchet and being like fighting. Like I'm personally not for violence, but if that's the reality you live, we're not gonna tune into respectability politics and be like, these are the black people we're for, these are the black people we're not. So if you wanna be ratchet, I'm with it because you're part of the community and we're gonna fight for your humanity, your dignity regardless. I feel like the problem is when you only have one image of what it means to be a black woman or what it is to be a black couple or do this or do that, and like only have one image of black success.
And you know like with situations like with cops growing up, like I've been stopped many times by cops because of my appearance. And it's just been those times where I've never done like any crimes like that. I don't have any records, I've never been in prison. But I've been stopped by cops where it's like, nah, you look suspicious, so I'm sure you have something. And they always try to antagonize you in a way where they want you to get upset and to really, you know, go in on them so that you can give them a reason to either arrest you or like pull out a gun on you or something.
One type of story is being displayed that the black man is dangerous, the black man is this. And you being a police officer and you were out there, you want to go back to your family at the end of the day. So the very first thing you think about is you've seen that story on TV, you've seen how a typical black man acts, and then you have that one approach of how you're supposed to handle this situation so that you are safe by yourself. So most times it's not necessarily that the person acting that way is racist per se, it's just like they're trying to be safe.
Because as a police officer, your job is to serve and protect. You shoot to maim, you shoot to disarm, you do not shoot to kill. A black person is like shot every 28 hours by a vigilante or a police officer. Just from the names that we have gotten, there have been so many since my ground, so it's hard to say that like people are just rioting because they're like angry, because like there's a history. Like my ground was not the first and he was not the last. And like when you just hear names every day of black men and women and children, because some of them are not like some of them are straight up boys, 12-year-olds and 7-year-old girls being shot in the house. And you took an oath to serve and protect. I don't give a fuck if you're not from that community or not. You took an oath. And when there's a history and culture of like policing low-income black communities, and like we see people being killed literally like every day, I think it's I could never not call that racism. That is racism to me. That is America with 3 kings. You know what I mean?
We have 2 speakers both featured in the documentary series called Hidden Colors. Our first speaker, who is the facilitator and chief executive officer of the African Centered Science Academy and has been an educator for over 30 years, Dr. Kaba Hiawatha Kamene.
Do I need a microphone?
It's up to you.
Hello, everybody. Hotep. Hotep in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, means peace. And so I bring you peace. And in all the other languages we speak, Jambo, and all of the Bon après-midi. I've come here to talk to you about something that I think is very important. There's a Pan-African conference that will be in Atlanta in August. And what becomes important about this conference is the idea of what is Pan-African. You know, what is nationalism? You know, we throw these words around and they sound good and we raise our fists and we talk about it. But I think what Brother Ike is saying is very important. You know, when I was looking at the different sayings of, you know, everyone around here, I mean, they all are so appropriate. By the way, are these from people here in LaGuardia? Yes? Well, I got to give a lot of credit to those who did this and just how you set up the room. And again, I want to thank my sister Naima and my brother Jared for inviting me to be a part of this. And you know, what becomes so important is that, you know, you are our youth. You know, I'm somewhat of an elder at this point. I'm retired. I call it graduation. You know, I spent 31 years in the New York City Board of Education in the Bronx. And I was in South Central Bronx in particular. And I work with every grade I've taught. Presently, I'm a professor at SUNY New Paltz in the Black Studies Department. And we work with our students constantly. And I teach a class in the fall entitled Introduction to Africa. And I have many different cultures that are in the room with me. I have peoples who would be of European descent, people of Asian descent, people of African descent. I had 3 students this year that were from Turkey. They were visiting students from Turkey. I've had students from Guinea-Bissau, Ghana, Nigeria. I've had students of African American descent, male, female, from out west. And one of the things that I'm so focused on, particularly looking at our young people, is that you are the generation that we're depending on. We, the people who were with the Black Panther Party, people who were with the different organizations, who saw back in the day what was going on. There were great things happening back then. And we believe that the forces of oppression saw that and did much of what they could to get in the way of that progress. I am a product of culture. And one of the first things that I teach my class, no matter, everybody in this room is an African. Make me no difference if you're from Japan. I don't care if you are from Sri Lanka. I don't care if you are Native American. Makes me no difference if you're German. If you fast back your family track, everybody in this room would find their family somewhere in the countries we today call Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, parts of Congo, parts of Southern Africa. That's where the human family was born. Period. Even if you're from Ghana and Nigeria, you're not from Ghana and Nigeria, your peoples moved out of the central part of Africa and migrated west at some point in time. The only place, the word is autochthonous, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Autochthonous means that you are of the land, you come of the land. And the only place on the planet where the human family came up out of the land was in what the countries we call Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, parts of the eastern fringe of Congo, and parts of the northern part of southern Africa. That is where the human family was born. We got that settled? Because there is no such thing as racism. It's white supremacy that you got to deal with. It's the idea of the domination of a particular group over other groups. Because to have racism implies there are other races. There's no such thing as an interracial marriage. You can have an intercultural marriage, but you cannot have an interracial marriage, because to have an interracial marriage, you have to, in your mind, you have to have two different groups. So that if a person from Germany marries a person from Nigeria, that's an intracultural marriage. That's not an interracial marriage. There's only one race on the planet. And it's the human race. Period. That's science. That's not emotion. But this whole idea of races came about in the 1800s with peoples of European descent attempting to create categories of people, put them in these boxes, and that is who you are. But I'm sorry, I'm from South Central Bronx. I had a student whose father was Korean and African American, and his mama was Puerto Rican and Dominican. Now tell me, what does he put down on his application on what race he belongs to? That's crazy. And we're living in an insane world, and no one's speaking up on it. In all of my life and all of the students I've ever met from all over Africa, I grew up with someone on 125th Street that looked just like that. I'll tell you another thing. I studied in Egypt. And I was on a felucca. I was on a boat. And I was turned to the back as we were traveling up one of the most beautiful rivers I've ever seen, the Hapi, or the Nile River. And I remember there was somebody singing. And he was singing in Arabic. And I said, I've heard that voice before. I mean, I've heard that voice before, the quality of voice. And brother was just singing. Y'all know what I mean when I say sang? It's not sing, it's sang. This brother could kick it. And I turned around, and family, I'm telling you the truth, he looked just like Sammy Davis Jr. Exactly, even the way he sang. For those, I mean, Sammy Davis may be taking some of y'all to the far back. Okay, but the greatest performer as I have ever known. But he sang just like, even the way he moved his jaw, the way Sammy Davis Jr. moved his jaw, the way he moved his head, the same thing. Now, how could somebody, Sammy Davis Jr. was part African American and his mother was Puerto Rican. Now, how could a singer, Sammy Davis Jr. in the United States of America, have someone that looked just like him and sounded just like him? How could that be possible? How could he look and sound the same? Two different people, two different cultural backgrounds. This brother was part what we call Nubian or Sudanese, part Egyptian also. How could two people look and sound so much alike unless there was some common genetic code? We're wrestling with an illusion, is what I'm trying to say. And this illusion is meant to keep us apart from each other. I remember when I first went to Jamaica. Wow, hey, Bob Marley, I was Nachi Dread. Oh man. That was my first, 1975, I was turned on to this brother with dreadlocks. I'd seen them dreadlocks in Ethiopia and in West Africa before. And he had a song, Trenchtown Rock, right? And the first thing I wanted to do when I went to Jamaica was to go to Trenchtown. And so when I get to, I speak to my wife's family and everybody, I said, come on, you're going to take me to Trenchtown. I go, no, we can't go to Trenchtown. I said, why can't you take me to Trenchtown? I said, that's a bad man's land. I said, it's a bad man's land. I said, you're talking about Bob Marley and Trenchtown. Take me to Trenchtown. Nobody would take me. But one of the housekeepers lived in Trenchtown. And so she heard that I wanted to go. She said, well, you can come with me after work sometime. We can drive on. So we were driving from Kingston into Trenchtown, and she stopped the car. And I was waiting, and she said, I'll be right back. And I was waiting, and I said, where did she go? She said she went home to get something. And I looked around, and I said, but you said you live in Trenchtown. Well, they said, well, this is Trenchtown. And I got up out that car, and I looked around. I said, you know, I grew up in a project in Manhattan, Amsterdam, houses by Lincoln Center. That's where I grew up 15 years of my life. And the only difference between Trenchtown and the projects I grew up in is that there was a dirt path as opposed to concrete. But the houses looked the same. I looked around, the people looked the same. But everybody in the United States is trying to get me not to go to Trenchtown because they say it's bad man's land. Really, what they're trying to do is keep me from my people whom I love. And the same way when folk come from other countries, Nigeria, they say, stay away from them African Americans. There were some bad people. Their pants are sagging, they're showing their butt. Hats on sideways, don't know how to belt. They're violent. So that when people come from other parts of the world, they come here, they want no part of African American people because they're afraid of us. Not realizing we're all the same. Somos uno. We're one people. And it is designed to keep us apart because once we get together, white supremacy is done. It's over. The idea of European domination ends the day we can see our commonality. The day that we can see how we could come together as a people and work together. And by the way, just a message to peoples of European descent. When we do get this together, when we do come together, because it's not about if, it's when. When we get this together, the last thing I plan on doing is trying to pay you back for all the stuff you put in. So don't worry about me trying to get back at you and put you in chains and make you work in my house. The last thing on most of our minds is paying white folk back for what they did. We was going someplace at one point in our history before we were so rudely interrupted. We were going someplace. We were doing things. We had families and villages and communities, and we had technology, and we had medical science. We were perfecting our lives. We were doing great things. We were enjoying our lives before we were so rudely interrupted. And once we get back together again, it's not about paying people back. We got to get back on the road and continue on the road we were going before we were so rudely interrupted. We have work that we have to do. We have to save this planet. I know many of you are hearing about global warming, and they're saying global warming doesn't exist, and some people are saying it does exist, and some people are saying that humans are causing it. Well, my interpretation of it is humans are not causing this. We're not that great. We don't have the power to make the planet get warm. We do have the power to clean it up after we've done polluted it. But we are not causing global warming. Global warming is something that occurs just like there was an ice age, and just like there's a cooling on the planet, there is also a warming of the planet. It's coming. The global warming is here. And if that storm that did not go through Oklahoma and Texas didn't show us something's going on, if the weather that we've been having over these past couple of months is not telling us something is changing on this planet, then we're not following science. There is a global warming. I don't think humans did it. I think that our guilt in this global warming is all the toxins that are amongst us, that this heat is now pressing down on us. But family, we have to get ourselves together. At one time, we all lived in the same place. We were all doing the same thing. And we have to study science, and that's why I so appreciate being with students, because you are the young bloods, you are the young minds that we're trying to get to help understand this idea. When I was watching the video, the idea of the young lady, the Latina, that was talking about she didn't know where she belonged and because of her complexion. Family, sometimes we do to ourselves what other people do to us also. We sometimes are prejudiced against ourselves. And I do understand that this whole idea of the lighter complexion and what they were able to do on the plantation and get the best of everything, I understand that, but that's not how it rolls with everybody. There's some people well melanated that act the same way. We have to study melanin. You have to understand what melanin is. And if you don't understand melanin, then you don't understand concepts that biologically make us who we are. It would be very difficult. People say, well, how did Germans and Italians and Irish and Albanians come into existence? How did hair texture change? You know, but we're not taught. We're not taught the fundamentals of science. You know, we're not taught about this. You have 5 layers in your skin. Please, Naima, you can let me know when it's time for me to wrap up. Because I've got billions of years to cover with you and what. I got some work to do. But in science, in your science classes, we have to start moving towards science. You know, sisters, come on. To the sisters in the room. You know, math and science. You invented it. Men didn't invent math and science, women did. African women did. Okay, that's where the brothers they say, brother, I was with you up until then. But we got to give credit where credit is due. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And when you look at it, why would a man have to count? Which is the basis of all mathematical formulations. Why would a man have to count naturally? He has no reason to count naturally. But why would a woman count naturally? You have to learn how to prepare for your life cycle. And so in the very early days of the human family, women began to prepare for the life cycle that nature was going to take her through every 28, 29, 30 days. And so she started counting. And that was the birth of what we today call mathematics. Numbers is the first thing you learn when you're in school. I'm a kindergarten teacher. What's the first thing we teach children? Numbers, counting. And out of that comes all of the other advanced mathematics, from algebra to geometry to trigonometry to calculus. But if you don't know your numbers, you can't do anything. So women started to count. Women then looked up into the heavens and noticed that there was a celestial body that also went through a 28, 29-day cycle. And it also went in 4 phases. And so she began to look up there, and she also realized that according to the cycles of this particular celestial object, also had a lot to do with her fluid systems within her. So she saw that the moon had an impact on her body. And so then she began to develop ideas and concepts as it relates to creating a cycle, not only her own human cycle, but also the lunar cycle. And the lunar cycle is at the basis of every calendrical system that exists on the planet. Whether it is the 365.25-day cycle, whether it is the 2,160-day year cycle, whether it is the 26,000-year cycle, every one of them, the lowest common denominator for all calendrical systems is the lunar cycle. And that is why the relationship of math and science was born in the head of a woman. And I do want to thank the first woman who invited the brother to sit in front of her and learn. Because that's how men were introduced to mathematics, but women invented it. And we have to study this. I've spoken to medical colleges before. And I've said to the medical colleges, I said, what do you know about melanin? And I'm talking to doctors who are in departments. I'm talking to pre-med students in college. I'm speaking to students in medical school. I'm talking to interns in hospitals. They don't know that much about melanin. They don't know much about this molecule. And I say to them, and I say to us, for you to study biology or think you're going to become a doctor and not know melanin is equivalent to studying auto mechanics and you don't know the role of gasoline. You can know the parts of a car. You can even have a key to turn it in the ignition and turn the car on. But if you ain't got gasoline, you ain't going nowhere. So if you don't know the role of melanin in the body, then you don't know the body. You can't talk about the body. If you don't know eumelanin in the body system, if you don't know neuromelanin in the brain, but you've got to study science to understand this. Because then you understand this thing about complexion. You understand what makes us the complexion that we are. And then out of that understanding of the complexion comes ideas as to whether it is superior, inferior, or if it's just part of nature. The bottom line is you are the complexion you are because of the relationship of you to the sun. Simple. It had nothing to do with one being bad and one being good, one being superior, one being inferior. It has nothing to do with that. It fundamentally has to do with your relationship to the sun. Because you all know that within 3 months, all of you are going to be at least 3 or 4 shades darker. In 6 months, you're going to lose that. Why? Because of your presence in the sun. It's very simple. It's a simple process to understand and to know. To know in your skin, in your epidermis, in your dermis. You have 5 layers in your epidermis, your top layer. Stratum corneum, stratum luciderm, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosa, and stratum basale. Very straightforward. In the bottom 2 layers, in the stratum spinosa and the stratum basale, you have a biochemical known as 7-dehydrocholesterol. In those bottom 2 layers, when you go out into the sun, the light and heat energy comes down. It is captured by your skin and brought down into those bottom layers. And in those bottom layers is when the conversion of vitamin D1 and D2 is converted into D3, D4, which is active vitamin D. People talk about we need vitamin D, but nobody tells you got 4 different types of vitamin D. 1 and 2 is inactive. It's in your skin. It's inactive. It just lays there. But once you're in the presence of the sun, in conjunction with 7-dehydrocholesterol, that's activated into the vitamin D3 that we say we need in our bodies. That absorbs and allows us to absorb calcium and bring various nutrients to our body. And so in the skin that is in the presence of the sun, the light and heat energy captured is going to make the skin very dark. And in the darkness of this skin, it's going to capture light and heat energy. Check this out. In Boston, and in all the places this winter, when they had that horrible snowstorm, guess what was the #1 selling item in places in the snow? Even some of us here might have used it. In the snow, what do you use when you have heavy snow? It's called black sand. Now why black sand? Black sand because black sand on the snow is going to capture light and heat energy and it's going to melt the snow. Blackness, darkness captures light and heat energy. This is science. This is not about superiority or inferiority. This is science that we have to understand. And unfortunately, because what you'd have to tell people about that would create an understanding that folk would say, well, wait a minute now. If black is all that bad, then why is it the only thing that exists? You know, we go around and say black is beautiful. Well, black is not just beautiful. Black is the only color that exists. And everything else comes out of the black. Let me tell you how I do this. Kindergarten children, I'm teaching kindergarten children primary and secondary colors. We draw a line. We start on a rainbow. We start with red. We draw a line on our piece of paper. And then we draw orange. And then we draw yellow. And then we draw green. All over the same line. To green, to blue, to indigo, to purple. What color do you think that line comes at the end? Black. It's black. Because all colors combined create black. Therefore, if all colors combined create black, then all colors come out of the black. All of us in this room are one people. And there's a small percentage of very rich people who are making a great deal of money keeping us apart. Because the moment we all get together and decide we ain't going to handle this no more, that game is up. And they are so afraid that you are going to continue to invite people like me up in here to talk to you about these issues. Because we have got to have a plan. Just like Brother said, what is the plan? Okay? What is our plan? The police. The police that come into the community. What's the answer with the police? The police should be from the community. So that if you shoot somebody I know and you live in my community, I'm going to see you today. The community's going to deal with you. The church is going to call you in to find out why you acting like this on the corner of 59th Street. But if you live way far away, you are not accountable to the community. It should be community policing, period. No discussion. And I don't even see why people are getting caught up in this. Everybody want to march. I respect march. I ain't marching. I was taught by my teacher, John Henry Clark, the only thing a march does is wears the soles of your shoes out. We did that in the 60s. Why are we still trying to do the same thing? If something that you tried didn't work, why do you keep doing the same thing? We march for voting rights. Ain't they pulling the voting rights back out? Come on. Let's be serious about what we're facing. You want to march? March to the nearest African American owned store and spend your money with your people. All that money we spent going down to DC marching, okay, I respect you. I respect everybody marching, so I don't want to get on anybody's case. Anybody doing anything for us as a people, I respect and honor. But let's get real with this now. The one group of people that were so happy that we were marching was Amtrak, Trailways, Greyhound, Delta, Hotel, Motel, and Holiday Inn. Even the police got paid overtime. Had we taken half of the money it took to get down there and gone to the nearest African American, African Hispanic, African, Haitian, African anything, if we had spent half our money with our people, we would have revolutionized America overnight. Because you want to hit them where their God is, and their God is in money. Every coin, every bill says, in God we trust. God is mentioned more in money than he is in the Bible. Save your money. Spend your money where you need to spend your money. Make your money rotate in your community a couple times. Maybe you will have to spend a little bit more money because a lot of folk that are community-based do not have the ability to purchase things in large quantities, so they're going to charge you a little bit more. Be willing to spend the extra money until there comes a time, and hopefully I tell also black businesses also, hey, respect your customer. Respect your customer. You know, stop trying to make up for all the money you ain't made in a year on one customer. They walk into your store, they go, oh, I like that picture. How much is it? $250,000. $250,000. Get out of here with that. Well, we charge people too much. We have to be fair with the community so that we are their best customer. So we'll come back and we'll tell other people, go there. That's a good store. Say, don't go over there. You charge $250,000 for a picture. So these are our solutions. Where are they? First of all, to the spiritual community. We got to get this spiritual thing together somehow. Our children are losing faith, not only in the Creator, our children are also losing faith in us. And we got to tell them the truth about where these religions came from. We have to be very honest about this. Because we are fighting amongst ourselves over religions. And I don't see why we're doing that. Because if there is one God, whether he is called Jehovah or Yahweh or Allah or God or Jesus or whatever he's called, and if the world is at war today, sending young people like you to war to fight over your God, I need to understand why is that one God whispering in 3 different ears the right to kill. He's whispering in people of Islamic faith. You have the right to kill Christians and Jews. He's whispering in Jewish ears. You have the right to kill Christians and Muslims. He's whispering in Christian ears. You have the right to kill Jews and Muslims. Disunity in religion, I have a problem with that. One of the things that this war in the so-called Middle East, which doesn't exist. Middle East does not exist. That's just a political, social name on something that don't exist. Ain't no such thing as the Middle East. Because if there was such a thing as the Middle East, if in fact Liberia and if Tunisia and Libya is in the Middle East, so is South Africa. Because East and West runs north to south. That's what they taught me in geography. And so if that be true, the Middle East would have to run the entire continent of Africa if the Middle East is in Libya, Egypt, and all these places. So the Middle East doesn't exist. That's just a figment of the imagination in order to what? Separate North Africa from Southern Africa, and they call it Sub-Saharan Africa, but they never tell you 10,000 years ago that desert didn't exist, and there was only one continent that all African people existed in. So they don't teach us these kinds of things. That's why I'm here, to tell you about these kinds of things. We have to get the spiritual aspects of our lives together. And we have to begin to come together as a people and understand that we have to stop fighting each other. Whether it is in Sudan, or whether it's on the corner in Queens, or any place else. If there is only one creator, I would imagine that one creator should be telling us the same story. And if it's not telling you the same story, then you got to question whether or not that is really the creator talking to you. Or someone pretending to be the creator. Let's get real, because I'm talking to y'all in a way that I think we need to talk to the young people. I really honestly think we need to talk like this, so that you as young people can come to your own decisions. Economically, we got to get ourselves together economically. As it relates to labor, this summer is coming. Can we hire our youth? Can we hire our own youth? And you know, I mean, why should they? Why should the youth respect us as elders when we have to go to somebody else for everything that we need? Why should they respect us? If they're going to go to someone else for a summer job, and we cannot supply our own children with jobs to be able to sustain themselves over the summer months, and then we complain because they hang on the corner, well, where are those community centers that we built? See, I've often spoken, you know, like in groups where there's elders predominantly, and I carry with me, I don't have it with me today, but they say, what's wrong with the young people? And I take out my mirror. I say, you want to know what the problem is? We're the problem with the young people. We as the elder generation did not step up and continue doing what we should have been doing. And that is why we now as elders have to step up and really honestly have a conversation with you and a dialogue with you so that you can understand what it is. You young brothers in particular, when you go out in that street, you got to understand that there's a predator out on that street. Not all of them, but there's a predator out there. And that's the police, the popo. And you got to understand that. And sisters, they after you is bad because you're the womb that gives birth to the future. So they're going to come after you too. And when you encounter a policeman, your response is yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. That's not the time to prove your manhood. Because they got something right here that can make it so your family don't see you tonight. And if what you see, I don't believe there are more attacks on black people now. The people say, why is there so many attacks on young black men? But there's not more attack. It's technology that's the difference. Brother going to work, going to do somebody's hair. You work in a barber shop down south, right? And he sees a little skirmish going on in the park. He pull out his phone. He starts to record that. Remember, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have that. Rodney King was the big thing in 1992. Say again? Can't we just all get along? Can't we all just get along? That's right. That's what he said, for those that may not know what that was. I see I'm in a room with folk that maybe post-1992. But that was on camera, and that's what was so phenomenal about Rodney King. But that was at a time when our phones, first of all, we all didn't have the phones that we have today. Not to mention they hooked the camera onto the phone now. At one time, the phone did not have a camera, but now it has a camera. So now what's happening is the moment something, look, some of you are videotaping it with your phones. Yes? So it's there, you know. I mean, there was a time when you'd have to wait for a brother to get you the DVD. Now you can do it yourself. I was in a class one time and I had given the students an assignment. It was obvious that some of them hadn't done it. I saw them pull out their phone, they started bringing out all the information. There was a time when if I didn't have information, I didn't do my assignment, I had to wait till I go back to the dorm. Now you can go right on your phone and find out everything that you need to, when was Marcus Garvey born, and when was Elijah Muhammad born. You can find that out right away now, on your phone. So that's the difference now. The technology is what's changed the structure of the streets out there. And now the police understand that you have that. But let's look at it another way. Our brother in Staten Island was videotaped and the police still got off. Right. So is it really the camera that makes the difference? No. And you have to ask yourself, so the bottom line is your conduct and how you conduct yourself in the streets. And to ensure that as you are encountering people, that you are able to come in contact with them and give them the type of regard that is going to push them off of you, at least for the moment. And that is to conduct yourself in a way that you're not trying to prove your manhood in front of them. You can wait. Wait till you get your lawyer, wait till everything else happens, and then you can prove your manhood in court. Also, you might get some cash at the same time. It'll pay for at least LaGuardia or any other college you go to. So what I'm saying is that we have to get ourselves, as it relates to hiring ourselves, and we have to look at gender issues. Gender issues is big. Gender issues is real big. Your generation is of a different mindset than the generation that I might have come out of. You're changing, but the elder generation is not. Some of us are set in our ways, and some of us are going to have to change with the times. Sisters, yo, you got it. You got the jobs. At a time that women did not have a job. There was a time in New York City, you know, where women had to be off the street by dark. Mm-hmm. And if you were found on the street and you were brought to the police precinct, your daughter, if she was the only one at home, she couldn't come get you because she couldn't be on the street. There was a time, ladies, that your dress had to be down. I remember my aunt was arrested in the projects because she had shorts on. Now I know that might blow your mind considering what we see folk wearing out there in the street now. But in my time, and I'm not that far back, but in my time, women could not wear shorts in the projects. So you can see how times have changed. Ladies, you need to have one big Congress and one big meeting and decide for yourselves what you want to do with your bodies. And for us brothers, we got to sit this out. It ain't our business. Women must have a meeting, starting with Congress, Senate, communities, and come up with laws as it relates to topics such as abortion, birth control, and all the other topics that impact women. Brothers, we got nothing to do with this. And if women were allowed to meet this way and come up with their own solutions, things would happen. Right now, this is creating a lot of disunity amongst the man and woman, and a nation is only as a nation is only as strong as its weakest family. And brothers, if we are a baby daddy, not only aren't you not the weakest part of the nation, you're not part of the nation. Nations aren't built on baby daddies. Now, we can do all this talk, well, I take care of them, I send them money. No. You want to build a nation? I hear everybody talking about nationhood and all the rest of this, but nobody's willing to commit themselves. It takes commitment to raise nations. It takes a dual home to build a nation, and even if dad can't be there, there has to be some form of duality in a home to raise a child. We're talking nationhood now. We're not talking survival. I'm not in a survival mode now. Survival mode says, well, everybody can work this out. That's fine. That's survival mode. I'm not talking survival mode. Survival is when you have no other choice and can't do nothing better. But if you want to build a nation, it's built on commitment. And it's built on family. Whatever family that may be. We have to think about the legal system. We have to really understand that the Dred Scott decision of the 1800s, y'all heard about Dred Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, Dred Scott came down with a law that's still active today, and it says that there is no law that needs to be followed that honors the humanity of black people. And so when somebody jumps up on the hood of a car and shoots in there 15 times, and the 15th shot is number 137, the policeman can get off because the coroner says he died before the 15 shots were fired at him. And we don't know the policeman actually killed 2 people who were innocent. Now, what kind of craziness is that? Do we really think the law applies to justice? Well, it does. Just us. And until we come to those decisions and understandings and move forward with a plan, as brothers say, a contingency plan, what's the plan? March? Well, while you were marching over one death, three more occurred. Security. We have got to secure our own community. Let's look at this reality. A lot of folks, this is a bitter pill to swallow, but let's swallow it. We got all upset with our brother in Baltimore. Rightfully so. We got upset. He was shot, killed. But last weekend, 28 people got shot in Baltimore. We shot them. We, being African folk, shot African folk. If black lives matter, don't those lives matter too? I mean, really, we have to have an in-house conversation because folks that say, you're airing dirty laundry. But I keep telling them, this dirty laundry is stinking up our house.
Yes, sir.
And we have to have these conversations. Black lives matter. And those lives matter whether it is coming from a policeman or a person of African descent. We have to come to that conclusion, as hard as it is to embrace that concept. Because the same thing that the family that lost that young man in Baltimore feels, that same feeling of loss of a loved one, is the same feeling that the other families have of losing theirs. And that hurts, no matter who. We have to start to think about these issues, family. And we have to have a plan. And we have to come together. When I look at our people, that we cover all sorts of looks and cultures. When you look at the African diaspora, one of the things that I'm pushing for, that I'm trying to work on, is the idea of the African diaspora becoming a state in the United States of Africa. That the diaspora creates some form of a nation within itself, whether you are from Puerto Rico, whether you are from República Dominicana, or whether you're from Jamaica or Haiti, whether you're from Chicago, Boston, New York, Sweden. If you are an African abroad, we should have a nation that sits with the Organization of African Unity as a voice in the African world. And we have to look to unite Africa, the United States of Africa, because that's the way the world is functioning right now. Nigeria is on to great things now. They have challenges, as we all do. But they're on to some great things. Africa is the wealthiest nation on the earth. All of the minerals, the jewels, the gems you can find in Africa. Every animal that exists on the planet exists in Africa, even the dog. Every animal that exists. Every plant in the world exist in Africa. Africa is the only part of the world that cannot have an earthquake because it sits on one plate. To have an earthquake, you have to sit on more than one plate, and what creates the earthquake is the shifting of those plates. Tectonic. Africa does not, it sits on one big plate, because when that hill came up out of the waters many millions of years ago, that's the top of the hill. And when the continental divide happened, and the shift started happening, is that there were breakaways of volcanoes and earthquakes that broke away from this main hill that now creates the continents that we know. If you go back to and look at all of the land of our planet, they fit like a crossword puzzle. But not just there. Look at a map of the ocean floor, because every one of those not only fit perfectly on top, but you can literally put them all together to reconstruct the hill that this landmass originally was. They fit also on the ocean floor. This is science. That's why we have to study science. I'm encouraging you to study science and study math. We were the inventors of it. Writing, we taught the world how to write. We had the first language system, the first alphabet. We had. Now we illiterate? What is this? How can we not know what we created? Unless we forgot. And you are young people, are so precious to us. I have so much love and respect for you, because I know that for you to be here in LaGuardia, I know that you have broken some things that were never meant for you to be. You literally are miracles in the making. But because you're so caught up in your world, you don't see from my perspective how great you really are. You don't realize what you... I mean, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but I'm saying for the most part, as I observe us as young people, even myself when I was young, you don't realize the things, the hurdles and the obstacles that you're overcoming just by getting up in the morning. When I woke up this morning, I had a question that no white man has to ask himself. And my question was, how black can I be today? I mean, I'm just asking myself, now, how long today can I be me before someone reminds me that I'm a black me? Every day of my life, every day of your life, you wake up like this. If I'm going home today, and all of a sudden sirens are blaring behind me and the lights are going off, I swear to God, that's me what I do. That car may go right over, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of folks don't understand this. So they try to tell us what our problem is. No, you don't know my problem. You've never had to live this mentality. And so these are things that I'd like to share with you and just have you think about, realize how great you really are. And that the elder generation really does respect you. And we have to come together as a people, no matter what our backgrounds are. We have to create this world for ourselves and for our children and for your children and your grandchildren. And as time goes on, you'll be able to do this. And I know I'm kind of past my time. But what I'd like to do is just open up for questions or comments. Anything that you'd like to talk about. I'll leave it up to you. Any questions, comments? Please.
Can you explain what melanin is?
Melanin is a molecule. Melanin is a molecule, and it is found throughout your body. And in the skin, it is the cause of your darkness. You see, organic life, in order for something to be organic, like when you go to the store, and they say to you things like, this is organic lettuce. Okay? There's no such thing as organic lettuce. Whether you buy it from Pathmark in the corner or whether you go to Whole Foods, lettuce is organic. Because it has assimilated what? It has assimilated carbon. What brings everything to life is carbon. And as you know, carbon is black. And that is why most things that came out of Africa have that color to it. And if you want to study the role of this relationship of the sun to the organism, there's a law in science known as Glogger's law, G-L-O-G-E-R. He was a scientist that did work on birds. And he found that in order for something to be of color, it has to be in the presence of the sun, which means that it would have to be well melanated. And so melanin is a molecule that you find in your skin. It is in fact in those two layers, the stratum, which means strata, layer, spinosa and vesicle, in the two lowest of your epidermal layer. And melanin is the cause for your darkness.
Does that have anything to do with, like, because you know how white rice is not really too healthy, and brown rice is healthy, and like white bread is not, and wheat bread is. Does that have anything to do with that?
Yes, it has a lot to do with it, because when you strip, when you take away the nutrients in brown sugar, it becomes white sugar. See, the process of making something white is in drawing nutrients out. So when you draw the nutrients out of brown rice, it becomes white rice. Yes. My man. Brother James Smalls, he's the next speaker. I'm going to take out my notes, ready to take notes for a drive. And so, when you strip something of its nutrients, it goes from a darker complexion to a white. For instance, I was cooking and I burned myself here and here. And if you burn yourself, you'll notice that there's a red mark. And then pretty soon you'll see it's encircled in brown.
Yeah.
That's the doctor in you. That's the melanin in you, healing you, literally stitching you together. And for those of us who have keloid, that's a beautiful thing. Because everybody's going, keloid is ugly, I'm going to the doctor to get that. Keloid is a beautiful thing. Because keloid is the overstitching of your body in order for you never to bleed to death. Because when you cut yourself, that becomes a weak area, so to speak. You bleed. When the brownness comes around and starts to turn brown and starts to heal, then what do? You get a brown scab. Okay? Now with keloid skin, keloid is your internal organism is saying, I am going to make it so that you will never ever be cut here again. So it's overstitching your body. Now a lot of folk go all over the place. They go to people to get it taken off. If you get if you don't like your scar and you get it taken off, there's a very good chance that if you ever get cut in that area again, you'll have a very serious health problem. So if you keloid, keep keloid. Don't get rid of it. Because that's your body telling you, I'm going to heal you so you never get sick here again. This is science, by the way. This is not emotion. We're not speaking superiority or inferiority. Because I believe Dr. King was right. It is the content of your character that makes you who you are. I really do. But at the same time, we have to understand the greatness upon which we were born. And to continue this great story of our greatness, Sister Naima would like to introduce the next speaker. Hotep.
Thank you for that. And our second speaker has been an activist since his teenage years. He is a former bodyguard of Malcolm X, and when Malcolm X was assassinated, he became his successor as Imam at the age of 21. He is also a former full-time adjunct lecturer and founder of the Black Studies Department for 18 years at City University of New York. Much of his knowledge is found in African traditional religion and the love for his people. Al-Hajj Amin Ashahid, aka Professor Small.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings. So I'm sorry I'm late. I have a 5-year-old today and she has asthma. She was sick. played a nurse until my wife got home. That's my 5-year-old granddaughter, which is one of 18. So my promise is going to be walking in that I owe you, and I'll come back anytime you ask me and give me as much time as you want. So I'll take the few minutes that I have, since one of the big questions that Naima asked was to deal with the issue of Pan-Africanism. And she wanted to deal with the Africans from all over the world who's confused about their relationships. And when you're confused about your relationships, you can't build anything. And we haven't been able to build a lot in one of the biggest cities in the world. We've been in this nation longer than most of the other ethnic groups in the nation. We've been in America, African Americans, and the African American population, by the way, is the most Pan-African gene pool on the planet Earth. There's no other group of Africans on the continent of Africa or away from the continent of Africa that has the amalgamation of gene pool, gene groupings that the African American grouping has. We're also the third largest African nation in the world. Brazil being first, Nigeria being second. We here in the United States, we are the third largest African nation. By far, we are the richest African nation in the world. We threw away $1 trillion last year with non-African peoples, and then we wondered why we're unemployed and crying about being poor. Because if you don't have an ethnic and a national and a racial identity, then you can't amalgamate your wealth. You can't aggregate your wealth. And so there's this confusion in identity, which isn't something we just decided to do. We've been in a race war in the world that everybody's afraid to admit to. The race war is still going on. You know, I'm coming in as of a couple of days ago from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I spent 5 days with the brothers and sisters out there commemorating one of the bloodiest racial battles and the genocide committed against the African population in 1921 in the history of America. And they're still fighting around that issue today. So Pan-Africanism, Pan, means to come together to be one. Africans, who are the Africans? We are the original people. If we take it from the Bible and do the Adam and Eve story, Adam had to be black. If you take it from the Quran, they also go back to the Adam and Eve story. Adam still had to be black. If I take it from the Buddhists, the Shinto, the Taoism, all of them have as their primary deity black folks. Everybody understands today in scientific fact that only the black woman have the mitochondria DNA to produce all other women and men. Y'all understand what mitochondria DNA is? It's the DNA that the women pass along. Only the African woman can produce everybody else in the world. No other woman can. So that tells you that you're the Genesis people. You're the parent people of Earth. And people want us to be ashamed of that, yet others who claim that position have no shame at all, even when they know that's not their primary station. Now, to be clear, there's only one race on the planet, it's the human race. But that human race's genesis is African. And that's what the argument and the fear is about. But there's no way around it. All science have proven that to be so. Okay? From genetics to anthropology. And certainly archaeology vindicates us. Because there's no bones, there's no artifacts older than what's found in Africa. So we just have to be real and honest about some things. And then because we're here, and somebody give me that 5-minute mark, we need to deal with the fact that we're here in the United States of America. And most of us came to America as prisoners of war or enslaved African, captured in their lands, wrongly and inhumanly brought here in a program of genocide that is still reverberating. And everybody's afraid to have a discussion on it. So you can have bikers in California or Texas, Waco, come into a town, kill 8 or 9 people, wound more than a dozen more, and not a single one is shot by a white policeman because they're white bikers. They killed all of those people, did all of that shooting, had all of those guns, and not a single one was even shot, let alone killed by a policeman. Yet we have a carpet that runs around the continent of unarmed black men and women shot down with the killers being vindicated. And we think that's normal. Well, those of us who are African Americans, we know that's not normal. We know we're in a state of war and we didn't initiate the war. And we're not going to walk back and play nice, because that's stupid. I served in the American military because this is my nation. I'm not going to let anybody take it away from me, especially some Johnny-come-latelys who were too lazy to work and made me work for nothing for 400 years and then called me lazy. That ain't happening. And I know this makes some of you feel, but small, don't be so hard. Well, dang. Look at how many kids we bury every weekend. This is what about all those black folks that kill black folks? I hear people in the media, they're really big on that one. There's not much different from all the white folks that kill white folks, and there's more white folks killing white folks than there's black folks killing black folks on any given weekend. But somehow the media don't know how to have that conversation with the rest of the nation. Conversations seem to only be about black folks and what they do or they don't do in a nation that's dominated by white folks. There's a report, comes out every November, it's called the Uniform Crime Report. It's put out by the FBI and the Justice Department. It'll give you all the statistics on who's committing the crimes in America. Go back 20 years, it will shock you. And you'll wonder why the rhetoric we get off of the media is what it is, when the statistics of the crime committed in America is what it is. So back to Pan-Africanism. We have the wealthiest continent on the planet Earth. Africans have not invaded Asia to get their wealth. Africans are not in China to get their wealth. Africans did not invade the Americas to get their wealth. We certainly didn't invade Europe to get their wealth. Every one of these communities have invaded Africa to this moment to get her wealth. Not one of those communities, I give China a little break, but her policies isn't the best either. Not one have come there as a fair trader. Not one. To come and says, listen, we need your gold, we need your diamond, we need your cobalt, we need your bauxite, we need your manganese, we need your oil, we need your natural gas, and we're willing to pay a fair price for it. But instead, they'll do what they did with MI5 and MI6 and create Boko Haram in Nigeria. I'm talking about British intelligence. I'm not afraid of the truth. And when all of y'all's religion says, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Isn't it strange when a Muslim general from the north became the president of Nigeria, suddenly they can find the Boko Haram camps? Isn't it strange when the Muslim general who helped to overthrow Abiola, one of the greatest leaders Nigeria ever produced, becomes the leader, all of a sudden we can find the women, we can find the girls, we can find the camps of the killers. Go back and study Nigerian history. Go back to colonialism, when the British were there committing genocide and calling it colonization. You'll see what they did was to use the brothers in the Muslim North to be their military arm as they control the country. And when they left that country, in a succession, Muslim leaders were controlled. And so the British corporate structure and their oil cabals were able to keep neo-colonialism or economic control over that country. Starting with the election of Abiola more than 20 years ago, when other Nigerians who were not a part of the British-controlled military elite began to organize to become leaders of that nation. And especially with Jonathan and this last term, when he began to put pressure on the oil company to clean up the Delta and to increase its revenue to that company and take no responsibility for what they were doing in Nigeria. All of a sudden, the British government spoke up and said they would break relationships with Nigeria over the corporate raiders having to pay for what they had done. And then Boko Haram just rose like a phoenix, murdering Muslims. I'm a Muslim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allah said, all that means, people, in the Arabic language, is that God is one. I speak English, and I'm not British, and nobody thinks that's extraordinary, right? And nobody would call me British because I speak English. But those people who masquerade as Muslim, murdering women and children and burning villages now in Somalia. How many people remember in Somalia when there was a general? He was a friend of mine. His name was General Aidid. Had a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful little girls. America put a dictator in Somalia to steal the oil of the Somalian people. Somalian people organized to take over their government. And we sent our military in, not to help the Somalian people, but to keep the dictator in power. That's when you got Black Hawk Down, where 8 Americans was killed that day, and 2,000 Somalians was killed, and we celebrate the death of the 8th. Pan-Africanism. The only way you become Pan-Africanism is that you know your history. You must know your history. Now, all of our history with Europe isn't bad. We had Europeans who died at our side. We had Europeans who died for us, both in Africa and here. So our movement has never been about having a race war. Otherwise, we would have won that a long time ago. We have the capability. We are not a minority. We are the majority of the planet Earth. And this foolishness of calling us minority and us accepting that position is very foolish. The smallest major ethnic population in the world is the European population. They're 1/9 of the world population, and yet they're coined called an African Asian minority. That is so absurd as not to be believed. You can't even have a real discussion about sociology because you can't get to placing people where they belong. So when you want to have a discussion about Pan-Africanism in this university, I was a student in this university. I was a professor in this university. I was an administrator in this university and had to deal with racism from the time I was a young man until I finally left in 1999. Made no sense. A tax-run university, at the time City College had 22,000 students when I entered in 1968. 22,000 students in the middle of Harlem, less than 150 black folks. How do you explain that and find logic in it? And it's the same. I would bet when these young people wanted to have this program, they met resistance. When Africans want to discuss Africans, we meet resistance. And yet nobody can tell us why that resistance. These children aren't orphans. They have the rest of us. They have the rest of us, and there's a lot of us, and we have a lot of power. But we would rather that be very positive. So I've come to tell African people, there's nothing wrong with uniting. Yes, the African Americans, some of us are so ignorant it's not to be believed, because that's what our education and the media has done for us. So we don't know how to even embrace our brothers and sisters from home, from the continent, or from the Caribbean. But then it's vice versa. Those from the Caribbean and from home have got such misinformation about us. We're lazy. We're criminals. They don't know how to embrace us. And so when we get over here, where unity is required, the ignorance of who we are and what our relationship is, because we don't have a history that explains that to us, allows our enemy to manipulate us economically, politically, and culturally. Because at the end of the day, you come to a university not to hang out. You come to get skilled, to get tooled. To what? To go back home and provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for yourself and your family. That's why we do this, not to get a degree. The degree is saying to you that you have these skills. You have proven that you have these skills. And now the marketplace can hire you possibly to use your skills so that you can do what? Make money. To do what? Feed your family, clothe your family, home your family. But you can't do that unless you control the economics, the politics, and the culture and the neighborhoods in which you live. And you cannot do that unless you can build a Pan-African relationship between yourselves. So I'm going to end now. I know that, man, you sound so harsh and so rough. I am a nice, loving guy. I'm a Yoruba priest. I am a Voodoo priest. I am a former Imam. My whole teaching is about loving people. But I also like to make a statement. Black people, they said this whole thing going, Black Lives Matter. Well, guess what? Black people like to be loved too. Black people like to be loved too. And to live in environments, especially in City University, with such anti-blackness. If you don't believe it, look at the curriculum. If you don't believe it, look at the administrative hierarchy. If you don't believe it, look at the faculty. And anti-blackness, it hurts people, even when they don't show it. So one thing we can do to stop hurting is loving one another. And that's what Pan-Africanism is about. Our common mother, our common culture, our common history, our common continent, our common spiritual traditions. Islam is an African tradition. Judaism, what was called once Hebrew Israelite, is an African tradition. Christianity, study the history, it's an African tradition. And then when we throw in the Yoruba, Akan, Voodoo, Congo, Zulu, and ancient Kemet with Netarus, they are African traditions. And anybody, as white as this young man is, you are African. You are an African. Because the lightness of your skin has nothing to do. If you take as light as you are, and I find the blackest person in this room, you're only 1/9 of a genetic variation. So people play games with us because they want to rule over the working group in this world in order to make money and stay in control. White folks fall for it. Black folks fall for it. Asian folks fall for it. Latino, Africanos, and Native Americans fall for it. We need to get really pan. We need to get pan-human. But while we're waiting to get pan-human, we definitely gonna get pan-African. Thank you.
So much, Dr. Kaba and Dr. Judy. Without further ado, we have Aaliyah with her poem. And then we have time for questions.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace and blessings. I just want to say thank you for that knowledge. That was amazing.
Thanks.
This poem is for resilience. From the beat of the drum to the ink of the pen, from the mental records to the spirit of ancestors within, our people have left a mark on this universe. But history books have told us different. They have told us his story, as in his perspective where truth is neglected, and like fools we just accept it. But if these shores could talk, I can assure you they would not sing lullabies. They would speak horror and trauma, reflecting on the great divide of our people, in which descendants became distant. The thin line between life and death became resistance, as the big ship sailed in motion through an ocean of our tears. A trade that lasted for so many years, a people never to be returned, a culture distorted, so many futures aborted. Ironically, we landed on liberty and chains, in which we remained for centuries to come, built this very nation with the stipend of scraps and crumbs. Yes, we received apologies, but never a portion of that capitalistic gain that blossomed from the soil of our blood, sweat, tears, and pain. Our resilience and strong minds has deemed us truly divine. Oppression has only sparked our craving to be liberated from a false history, a myth that has been formulated. Our religion has been rearranged. So many of us live in doubt, and our morals, like endangered species, they are slowly dying out. But even with the heavy burden attached to our skin, we are still connected to the intelligence that is our melanin. The foul smell of their envy and negative energy is overwhelming our vicinity. But all we want is peace and understanding. Justice and respect is all we are demanding, and to those who migrated on your own, never look down on the diaspora. We all came from the same throne. We all left the same home. When you look in the mirror, look deeper. Make sure to accessorize with the conscious mind, because you are divine. Reach out to the young ones. Pay the veil of an imprisoned soul. Break the concrete so black roses can grow. Don't let them become fallen stars, forced to submit to the gravity of grave sites and prison bars. Invest and spend in the way of Allah the Most High. You will receive profit sky high and blessings, a currency that can't be denied. And don't ever step into the shackles, no matter how much you fear the strap. Choose temporary pain over a lifelong trap of the system. And let me repeat these words just in case you missed them. Make sure to accessorize with a conscious mind. We must first learn to fully love ourselves, because you and I are only a reflection of each other. So my sisters and brothers, pick up your crowns and let them tower over your beings, because you are the real kings and queens. Time to reclaim the throne.
Questions, because we're trying to give us each other enough time to exit, because we have to get out of here before, about 5:30. So if anyone has any questions, we have 5 minutes for questions. Anyone?
Secret to life is to have no fear.
I'm going to ask him. He said that we, the African American or the black woman, has a mitochondria gene. DNA. That's the only DNA that can.
The African woman is the only one that can produce all other species on Earth. That is a natural scientific fact that the whole world accepts.
I can Google that, right?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
No, I'm just going to add that if you want to Google PBS documentary, it's called The Real Eve.
The Real Eve?
The Real Eve spoke about that mitochondrial DNA.
Okay.
And then it sends you to sites that you can do further research in.
Right, thank you.
And all I'm saying is there's only the human race. Someone else decided. This whole concept of race as a construct, as we now have it, really developed in the 18th century. And it was developed primarily out of the German schools of thought. And it was developed to justify the invasion of Africa and the enslavement of African peoples. There's a book you can buy at Barnes & Noble. It's called El Jahiz by Jahiz. This is a black man. He's writing in the 8th century Iraq, and his book is called The Superiority of the Black Over the White. 8th century Iraq. El Jahiz by Jahiz. So this discussion is not a new one. Or you can go back to Plato. Remember him? They used to hold him up very high in Western academia. Plato, the great philosopher. He wrote a piece, it's called Phaedrus. In the university, they give us the Republic written by Aristotle and said he's writing about Plato. What Plato is given credit for P-H-E-D-R-U-S, Phaedrus. And in Phaedrus, Plato says, the African, but he's using the word Ethiopia, which means burnt face. Ethiopia is not an African word, it's a Greek word. It means burnt face or baked in the sun. And he says the Ethiopians have given the world all of its sciences. And then he begins to name them. Medicine, geometry, arithmetic. He said, but the greatest science of all that they've given the world is a language we call Medu Neche, the tongue of God. You call it hieroglyph. So we need to study history. And it baffles me with all of the knowledge and all of the material and all of the museums and libraries of the world, they're not taught in the universities of America. It's shameful. Absolutely shameful. But you, with this computer, can do it on your own. You can bypass the university if you need to. Yes.
Recently, Dr. Smalls, I saw you at Abyssinia Baptist Church at a solemn ceremony of a great man. Being that we're in a college, can you just speak a little about Dr. Ben? I think a lot of the students may not know who he was.
Dr. Yosef Ben Yaakinen, he was born in Ethiopia. He was raised in the Virgin Islands in Puerto Rico. His mom was Puerto Rican, his daddy was Ethiopian. He had about 4 degrees. He was an architect, an attorney, an historian, Egyptologist, but he wrote 42 books. One of his greatest work is Black Man of the Nile and His Family, or African Mother of Western Civilization, or African Origin of Western Religions. But he passed away at 96. He was my brother, my friend, my teacher, also with Brother Kaba. I sat at his bedside with Brother Reggie for 2 weeks straight as he made his exit. And I presided as the chief priest over his funeral. We do have a theocracy that the world don't recognize. And what happened, Dr. Ben, who gave us all of this, who opened up Egypt to us and showed us that Egypt was indeed an African civilization, because it had been painted to us as being a European civilization, despite the blackness of all of the pharaohs. The next time I come, I'll show you a slide series from Pharaoh number 1 to the last of the African, from the first dynasty to the 30th, and you will not find a non-African ruling Egypt until the Greeks come. And so we need to know these things. Dr. Ben taught us these things. And what I did for him is something that was not done in the West before, in that manner. I did a ceremony that was done for the pharaohs. It's called the opening of the mouth. And to have him speak for Ma'at, the virtues or the admonition of Ma'at, which is the 42 virtues. He was our father, and an extraordinary father. With 42 books, he will live for eternity, and we believe that. In our tradition, and all of our traditions, we believe in reincarnation, except we only come back as humans, and we come back in the same family we were originally born into the earth. In the Yoruba, that's called Alobo. And so in our Lords, we got 8 times to come and get yourself ready to join God. And if you don't do it, you go back to the ancestors, and you got to do 8 more times. So if you live a good virtuous life, after 8 comings and going, you go home to eternity and become one of the energy that creates life, or you just have to keep doing it all over again. And so I'm not saying anything, taking anything away. If you listen to me, there's only one human race. I remember the Pope was in Cameroon, the Pope before this Pope. He was in Cameroon in 2009, I think it was. And he made a speech, and in that speech, he told the Cameroonian people and the world, because it was in Time magazine, of the 10 fathers that authored the original doctrine of the church, the Christian church, the Catholic church. 7 was Africans. Of the 10 fathers, according to the Bible, that authored the theocracy that become known as Christianity, 7 was Africans. So it's a mystery to me why people would rather me be inferior and a crook and throw me in jail and beat me up. I've been in all those things too. But it's just as easy to sit down and have a dialogue and let's learn history together and repeat the glories that history gave us.
Gentlemen, I see a few books on the table. I was just wondering, is there any books that you could recommend to the audience so that we could dig more into the topic of this conversation?
Absolutely. That's why I brought these, but I got stuck in that crazy chapter. Real quick, Monday. The New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander. Extraordinary attorney. Fantastic woman. And she's looked at what the prison system is all about and why it exists. You must get this book. A sister book to this would be The Criminalization of a Race. It's the dissertation of Dr. Shashi McIntyre. Those 2 books together will tell you what the prison industrial complex is about. And you know this thing that they've been arguing about arresting people for these little things to keep it from becoming big things? That's a part of that criminalization process, because you arrest some kid and you let him go back home, he rode his bicycle on the street, he bumped into somebody's car. You give him a B felony, but he doesn't go to jail. But he pleads guilty so that he can go home, because the family don't have any money. Well, that's felony number 1. 2 more felonies in prison for the rest of his life. Criminals. Next. Civilization or Barbarism by Sheikh Anta. He's a Senegalese scholar, a Muslim, a Marxist, and one of the most African-centered persons you want to meet. His wife was of European heritage, and it presented no contradiction in his development as an African scholar and scientist. And he was the man that proved that the mummies, from especially one that's called the Marietta expeditions, were all black. He came up with a test to test the melanin in the skins of the mummies in the museum in Cairo. And this book, this is one of about 15 of his books, but this is his most, I think this is the masterpiece, Civilization or Barbarism.
I'm sorry, the name of that book?
Sir?
The name of that book?
Civilization or Barbarism, Sheikh Anta. Then there's King Leopold's Ghost. One European nation, financed by the rest of the banks of America and Europe, committed a genocide in the Congo that cost the life of nearly 30 million Africans, and nobody had a discussion about it. And so this is a book that describes that genocide. It's called King Leopold's Ghost. This is Leopold, I think, the second of Belgium, second or third, one of those Leopolds. And when you read this book, Livingston, I presume, won't turn out to be such a nice guy, Dr. Livingston, and Noel Stanley, who did the expedition for Leopold and committed a crime of genocide on his own. You know the great Stanley that we hear about in history like he's some nice guy? He was a killer that murdered people. And he laid out the groundwork. He worked for this guy. But I'm not angry, I'm just rough about it. Then there is this most magnificent book. It's called Before the Mayflower, The History of Black America by a magnificent scholar, Leron Bennett, who was the resident historian for Ebony magazine for nearly 30 years or more for Leron. And it just deals with African American history in such a fantastic way. And then he follows it up with this one, The Shaping of Black America, which really does a chronicling of our history. And so with these two, you get African American. With this one, you get the continent of Africa. With this, you get this whole issue of criminalization of race, and to look at a genocide that dwarfs any genocide we know in history. There's one other book, I couldn't get a copy, by Dr. Tony Martin. He's now an ancestor, one of our beautiful comrades that we both hung with very well. His last book was called A History of the Caribbean. If you don't get that book, you don't even know Caribbean history. Tony walks on water with that one. Buy that book, Dr. Tony Martin, A History of the Caribbean.
Let's give it one more time for our speakers. Who has a few words?
I just wanted to say that, first of all, I wanted to mention that Professor Walters is here with his class. And I also want to mention, I need to go. I don't know how good. I also wanted to mention that I'm particularly pleased that my students were kind enough to come. I was turned on to the documentary Hidden Colors by Veer, who's one of my students from a few years ago. Thank you very much. And because I'm teaching critical thinking this semester, I decided that it would be a good idea to share that documentary with my students who, at this particular semester, 95% of them come from Africa. Would you please stand? So it was a wonderful experience for them to see the documentary and then to follow up and do the research, because I taught them, don't just accept what anyone says, you need to find out for yourself. So they're a wonderful group of students. I'm very proud of them. I'm going to miss them at the end of the semester. I wanted to give a special thank you to you two scholars to come and to be such wonderful role models. In addition, I do have to say that I'm extremely proud of Naima. Yes. Woo! About a year ago, and she was in the hall having a conversation with someone about this idea. And I overheard the conversation, and I did what I do best, which is to mind other people's business, right? So I stepped into the conversation with her, and we have become like this, and I am her informal mentor. I'm mentoring her informally now. She hasn't asked me. I don't have a title, but I don't let her breathe without me making sure that she stays on it. And she tried to do this through some other venues, some other organizations, and they didn't quite work out. She did something that was visionary, something that I want my students to do in the future. She actually started her own club, the Pan-African Club, and that's why we're able to do this. So I'm extremely proud of someone that takes a thought and a vision and applies their shoulder to the wheel and makes it come to fruition. So thank you, thank you.
Let's eat.